Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our candidate forum this evening for House District 12. We're getting ready to start here. We're still waiting for one of our candidates to join, but we are expecting both candidates, and under the league ground rules, we will proceed with the forum even if one of them does not show up. So we're just getting ready to get started here. The recording is in progress. We are waiting to start the Facebook Live. Here comes the Facebook live stream right now. People are joining the forum. My name is Ann Luther. I'm with the League of Women Voters Down East. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I especially want to thank the candidates, Billy Bob Faulkingham and Norm Bramwell. Norm is not here yet, as well as Cyndi Wood for moderating the forum tonight. Thank you all for joining us. We are recording the forum on Zoom, and we'll post that recording later tonight. Participants can post questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of their Zoom toolbar, and Cyndi will ask those questions in whatever order she deems, and she may reword the questions, but she will pose them as long as time permits. And what else? The chat will be disabled on the Zoom format tonight, but otherwise we're gonna proceed. So I think at this point, I'll introduce Cyndi. This may be the Billy Bob show tonight, unless Norm shows up pretty soon, but I'm gonna introduce Cyndi. She will be the moderator tonight and will be in charge from here on out. So Cyndi Wood is the managing editor of the Ellsworth American, a prize-winning local weekly, and we're all very fortunate to have that paper and Cyndi as its editor. Take it away, Cyndi.
Thank you, Anne, and to all the League of Women Voters for helping organize this event, and for Billy Bob and hopefully Norman joining us soon. I'll start by introducing the candidates in alphabetical order. Norman Bamford was raised on Gouldsboro Point with grandparents living in Winter Harbor and Steuben. After graduating from Sumner in 1997, he left for the Air Force. Today, he is pastor of Asheville Community Church and chair of the Sullivan Select Board. He is the father of 5 biological children and several bonus kids, in addition to being a grandfather. He and spouse Brad Bamford in 2019 became official foster parents. Bamford is on the Parks and Rec Committee, Memorial Day Committee, Rec Center Committee, Sullivan Days Committee, and every year puts on 2 free dinners for the community. Billy Bob Faulkingham is a Winter Harbor fisherman who has served 6 years as a Winter Harbor selectman and 6 years as a Maine state representative, including as House Minority Leader for 2 years. He and wife Carrie have 3 children, Robin, Carter, and Harper. Faulkingham says parents Pat and Becky Faulkingham instilled in him the values of honesty and work ethic. He became involved in politics because he didn't like the direction our state was going in and wanted to make the community and state a better place. In Augusta, he has been involved in passing bills for the fishing industry, retired teachers, and increasing tax exemptions on pensions. All right, the rules are that each candidate will have 3 minutes to make an opening statement. Then we're gonna alternate the order of the candidates answering through 3 questions that were provided to them in advance. Then we will launch into audience questions, and you can use the Zoom Q&A function to send questions. And they will each have 2 minutes to respond to those questions. Finally, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to present a closing statement. And Billy Bob, do you want to open things up with your opening statement?
Good evening, Cyndi. I'd like to thank the League of Women's Voters for hosting this debate tonight, and thank you, Cyndi, for moderating it. I am Representative Billy Bob Faulkingham. I'm born and raised in Winter Harbor, Maine. I've served in the legislature for 6 years. Before that, I was a select man in the town of Winter Harbor for 6 years. And I just love this community. I love this district. I truly feel like my house district is the most beautiful place on earth. We're so blessed to live in this community. I grew up in Winter Harbor, and it was a blessing to grow up here. playing in town, riding my bikes with friends. And my earliest memories are going on the boat lobstering with my father at 3 years old. I was raised by two great parents, Pat and Becky Faulkingham. I've got a brother, Herman, and we were a very close family. I learned the value of hard work from my parents. Both of my parents worked all the time. My mother worked uh, mostly in the factory at Stinson's, also at the light bulb factory at Ellscott's. And the thing I remember most about my parents is how much they worked, and that I get that work ethic from them. I don't work in the same way as they do, but I work hard at what I do, and that's where I learned that work ethic and honesty. Honesty uh, was very important, and I learned that at a young age to work hard and be honest. So in the legislature, I have been made leader of the Republican caucus by my colleagues. And I think that's just because they saw how hard I work and thought that I would make a good representative of the caucus. And so down in Augusta, I've had been able to pass a lot of bills down there. I've passed bills to increase health insurance for retired teachers. I increased the deduction on pensions for all people. I was successful in passing a constitutional amendment adding a declaration to the rights in the main constitution, the right to food. It was the 25th Declaration of Rights, and it was the first one added to our Constitution since 1820. So I really love serving down there, representing my community, and I just want to continue doing it.
Thank you. And a reminder to anyone who's just coming on, we're hoping that Norman will be able to join us, and we'll just weave him in when he is able to get on. All right, so we'll jump right into the prepared questions. We faced some devastating storms last winter. What should the state of Maine do to mitigate and/or prepare for these effects in the future? Billy Bob?
Sensing a theme here that it's going to be my turn every time. So I'd like to answer that question by starting off with what we shouldn't do. And we shouldn't try all these elaborate ideas to change the global climate here in the state of Maine. There's 8 billion people on planet Earth. The state of Maine has only 1 million. The United States has 360 million. So I think it's kind of crazy when you see politicians, specifically the Democrats, Janet Mills, trying to push these crazy ideas in the state of Maine that they think are going to save the world from climate change. Is the temperature increasing year over year? Well, all you have to do is look at the records, and you can see that But we don't need to jump to conclusions on what's it caused by and all these other things by making Mainers drive electric cars, which are a bad idea, by filling our fields full of solar panels, by filling our oceans full of windmills. So, let's have a real conversation on what are good policies that we can have. If people seem to come to some consensus that we need to limit carbon and take carbon out of what we're putting into the air. Okay, well, let's talk about things like hydro, good ideas like that, rather than these solar panels that are making our electric bills go through the roof, that are just bringing over toxic waste, that are sending money over to China. These are bad ideas. There's a lot of good ideas that we can agree on. And the beautiful thing is you can get people that don't agree on the whole theory of climate change. You can get them to agree that there are good energy sources like hydro that are carbon free, renewable, and cheap. More importantly, cheap, because we got to remember there are countries like China that are putting coal plants online all the time, India, Pakistan, places like that. And we're not doing anything to change what they're doing. So we shouldn't be handcuffing Americans, specifically Mainers, by making them try to drive electric cars, which aren't very good here, or destroy our fields with solar panels, or fill our ocean with windmills. But more specifically to the storm related stuff, we need to streamline regulations so that when those things do happen, we can facilitate the rebuilding quicker. We need to look at insurance and see if we can make changes to the insurance market so that there's insurance money available when those types of things happen. I'm really hoping that we don't see back-to-back storms again like we saw last winter.
Thank you. The next question, from nursing home closures to shrinking hospital and clinical services, Maine seems to be facing a crisis in rural health care. How should the legislature address this issue?
Yeah, so this is a known shortage. There's a lack of nurses. Part of that is because funding, we don't have the money to pay for them. Part of that is because of the mandates that were given during COVID to get shots. We lost a lot of nurses due to that. And we're the oldest country in the state. So obviously when you get older and older, you're going to, if you have the same amount of nurses, there's going to be a shortage, and we haven't maintained the same amount of nurses. It's a problem that's gotten worse because of costs, and our geography has a lot to do with it. We're spread out. So there's also another idea kicking around, which, is an idea that sounds good. It's got to do with ratios, but I have a lot of concern, with that ratio bill, because we're already so short. And if it continues to get worse, I don't know how we're even going to let people through the door of a hospital. So we need to look at ways that we can, like telehealth is one way. That's something that really came up during COVID. I think we need to look at how telehealth works, positively and negatively, how we can expand it. And we need to find ways to attract nurses, doctors, and people in the healthcare field to Maine and keep them here. We need to have incentives to get them here. But obviously what we're doing right now isn't working. So we need to look at further expanding that.
Thank you. Next question. What are the social and economic impacts of limited housing in your area? What role can the state legislature play in addressing them?
Oh, sorry. Limited housing, yes. Housing is oh, Norman's on here. Do you want to let Norman jump in?
If you want to see the floor. Hi, Norman. Glad you could join us. Can you hear us?
Yeah, it was a little garbly at first. I thought we started at 6.
Oh dear. No, 5:30.
Oh, yeah, I must have put it in wrong.
Well, we're glad you're here now. We were just taking up the question about housing. Do you want a minute to settle in, or are you ready to go?
Hold on just a second. It's all garbly. Maybe if I move into a different room, I'll get better reception.
Fingers
All
crossed.
right, you were saying something about housing.
Yes, we were just getting to the question about housing, and I wanted to know if you wanted to start this one, or if I can have Billy Bob start this.
Okay. I think he was in the middle, so I'll let him finish.
Okay. Billy Bob.
Sorry, I apologize. We could pause here if you want to let Norman go ahead and catch up on the other
Oh, start from the beginning. Okay.
questions.
Yeah, And I don't know if there are any specific league rules. I've missed what we should do, if we should just pick up where we were or go let him do his opening statement.
Yeah, we're kind of winging it here, but I think if you want to let him catch up, do his opening statement, answer the first two questions, then we'll come back with the two of them on question number 3.
Okay, sounds like a plan. All right, Norman, your opening statement about your candidacy.
Okay. I missed my bio, so I might be repeating some of it. But yeah, my name is Norm Bamford. I'm a father of 5, grandfather of 7, selectman here in the town of Sullivan. My roots run very deep in this area. This is home for me. My family's been here since the 1700s, and this place is home. Even after graduating from Sumner and going into the Air Force for 10 years, traveling the whole world, there was no place as special as right here. So this place is very near and dear to me. So when I got out to become a pastor, and I couldn't wait to get back to this area to service and to help people. And I found it very rewarding and fulfilling to help people, and I saw a great need. So I started getting more involved in my community. I'm part of Parks and Rec. I'm on the Rec Center Committee, Sullivan Days. Yeah, just about every board. And then I became a selectman. Been a community leader doing things like the Memorial Day events. And when this opportunity presented itself, I thought, yeah, this would be a great opportunity to help even more people and to be a part of this community. So that's why I'm here.
All right, thank you. Then we've done questions 1 and 2, so I'm just going to circle back to those for you.
Sure.
And these are the ones you should have received in advance. Question 1, we faced some devastating storms last winter. What should the state of Maine do to mitigate and or prepare for these effects in the future?
Yeah, it's no doubt that climate change has definitely reared its head. In the last couple of years, we've had some very severe storms. Fortunately, Sullivan didn't get hit as hard as the surrounding communities. Gordon's Wharf did wash out, and we had to shore up some of the culverts and stuff. We had a lot of road washouts, but I saw the devastation in Billy Bob's hometown of Winter Harbor. Like that was massive. And so there's no way that we can say that climate change isn't real or that it isn't a very important topic. Already through the state, there's these community resilience grants, which I think is a great step forward, giving money to help us because there might be little that we can do as a small town to change climate change, but we definitely can get ready for it by doing things, drainage and preparing through these community resilience things. So I would just like to see more building on that, those kind of programs, making sure that they stay around. And that's my thoughts on that question.
Thank you. Question 2 was, from nursing home closures to shrinking hospital and clinical services, Maine seems to be facing a crisis in rural healthcare. How should the legislature address this vital issue?
Yeah, that was something that I had been noticing. Now, my grandparents and my parents are now no longer with us, but I've definitely noticed the closure of a lot of nursing homes. And so I asked them, people who are in the healthcare profession, why that is. Why are we seeing less nursing homes when we're the oldest state in the union? These services are very crucial. They're very vital, and I couldn't understand why they're closing. And they explained it's very simple: is that you have these larger corporations who are buying these nursing homes, who don't want to pay for nurses. The Medicare reimbursement isn't happening as quickly as it should. And so they find ways to close these facilities to open up residential assisted living where they don't have to pay qualified nurses to run these establishments. And so they can save money, but the quality of care is not there as it would be in a nursing facility. And so I think that the legislature should consider aspects of regulating those assisted living facilities. And also, we're going to get on this question next about housing, but LD 2003 with additional housing units and stuff is a good start for people who are thinking about when they get older. They can build themselves like a one-bedroom apartment off their house or in the backyard. So when they get older, their kids can move into the larger house and they can have the smaller house. So I think there are definitely things that the state should be doing, as well as just bolstering up things that are happening now. Because this is a very important thing. Like I said, we're the oldest state in the union and we're not getting any younger.
Thank you. I think you're all caught up now. So we'll go to question 3, which was about the housing issue that you just referenced. And the question is, what are the social and economic impacts of limited housing in your area? And what role can the state legislature play in addressing them? And we'll start with Billy Bob on this one.
So right now, the social and economic impacts of housing in my area are that there's not enough housing. People are having trouble finding housing. And it's a problem that has gotten a lot worse in the last few years. One thing we always had was cheap housing. You could find real estate reasonably priced, and people were able to buy property and live in it with a relatively low mortgage. But that's not the case, especially after 2020 and COVID. The prices went up, and it really increased the amount of people from out of state that were coming in and buying up the real estate here. It's a problem that we've been experiencing longer on the coast than the rest of the state. Now the rest of the state is really seeing an explosion of this as well. And also the explosion of Airbnbs or weekly rentals has really taken a lot of housing off the market. That really took a lot of the rental housing off the market. So it's really hard for people to find a house, find a place to live. Because if they're going to, either rent or pay a mortgage, it's going to be much higher than it used to be in the past. And with the old, the way people used to have low mortgage payments or low rent payments, you could do that on a lower income. So what's happening is people are being squeezed, because if you have a lower income, you can't afford to pay these higher rents, or to get a mortgage right now is crazy because interest rates are over 8%. So people aren't able to buy houses like they used to. Even because of inflation, things like living in the trailer park are even got crazy because the lot rentals have increased so much. So it's a bad situation right now. It's forcing people to move further inland or move out of state, really. Maine is ranked number 18th highest for cost of groceries. Our neighbor, New Hampshire, is ranked 50th. That means the cheapest groceries in the country are in New Hampshire, our neighbor. And if you look at why that is, it's simple. New Hampshire has always been a free state, and it's run by Republicans. The state of Maine is run by Democrats, and the cost of energy is going through the roof. So it's really simple to figure out why inflation is so much higher here in Maine than it is in New Hampshire. And that inflation is causing everything to go up, make it so people can't afford to live here. So what we need to focus on is deregulation, getting rid of red tape. One thing we still have is a lot of land, and we need to decrease inflation and make it affordable so people can start buying houses again.
Thank you. Norman, same question on housing. Oh, I think you're on mute. Yep.
There we go. I figured it out. So I agree with, a lot of what Billy Bob said, obviously not all. So the socio and economic impacts of the housing here in this area, yeah, I think of Sumner High School and talking with the former principal who wanted to live in Sullivan, but he couldn't because there was no housing available. You talk about other teachers who got offered jobs and then they couldn't stay because there was no housing in the area. So we're losing out on some really good people because we just don't have the housing. We don't have the room here. He is right. In 2020, there was a lot of people that moved to this area, and yeah, so the housing market has depleted, and houses are really expensive. I think that the state, with the passage of LD 2003, was a good first step. It helped with lot sizes and things of that nature so that people could build additional housing units on their property for their aging parents, or maybe you have kids that are graduating from Sumner that don't want to leave the area, but they have to because there's nothing available. So by reducing the lot sizes and allowing these extra units, that's a great first step. However, there's some of this bill that still leaves some room for improvement, such as, great, now our lot sizes are changed, but we don't have public sewer, we don't have public water. So therefore, people are going to have to be able to expand their septic systems in order to comply with these changes and to build the extra housing that's needed. And there is some grants available for people in certain circumstances for septic system upgrades and stuff. And I'd like to see that upgraded. I'd like to see some more expansion on LD 2003 to create more places for people to be. I have nothing against Airbnbs or short-term rentals. I feel like it's a great way for people to make money. It's great for tourists to come. It can help small businesses, like gift shops like I've got when people come into our area. So I really don't have anything against them. I just would really like to see more affordable housing, more things. There's something I've been thinking about a lot with like tax acquired properties and things that the town has to sit on. Why can't those be offered to developments of affordable housing if the town owns them, or have the state come up with easy ways for towns to create housing authorities to be able to create affordable housing for people? We're not talking low income, we're talking affordable housing. I think those are just...
That's time. Thank you. All right, we will move on to audience questions. And again, for anybody tuning in, you can use the Q&A function if you want to submit a question. This person would like to know, in 2023, the legislature very narrowly voted to expand abortion access in Maine. Going forward, would you support any changes to state law governing reproductive health, including abortion? Norm, do you want to start that one?
Sure. I feel that right now Maine is like the gold standard for this issue. We're a safe place for women who need to come here to have those procedures for reproductive health. I feel that the information around abortion is often misleading. It's often skewed, and a lot of times this is because of tubal pregnancies. It could be because of health risk. It could be for a number of reasons that a woman may choose not to carry the child to term. And I think right now Maine is leading the way in showing the example of a healthy balance of women's rights, that women should be allowed to have full autonomy of their bodies, and nobody should be telling them they have to do something like carry a pregnancy that's going to harm them, or a pregnancy that's due to rape or incest. As a foster parent, I've seen that we have thousands of kids that are in the foster system, and that is a mess and needs to be addressed. And we would just be adding more children to the foster system by carrying these unwanted pregnancies. So I feel right now I would not limit a woman's choice in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you. Billy Bob, the same question.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. In 2023, the legislature very narrowly voted to expand abortion access in Maine. Going forward, would you support any changes to current state law governing reproductive health care, including abortion?
Yeah, so first of all, that the bill that you're referring to was one of the most vile and disgusting bills ever passed in the legislature. When, Norman referenced, common sense abortion laws, that's what we had. We had a law that had been on the books for many years, and it was agreed on, by both parties. It was that a woman could have an abortion up to viability, which is very late in pregnancy, 20, 22, 24 weeks. That's a fully developed baby with a heartbeat, arms, legs, feelings, tucking its thumb, fully able to live outside of the mother's womb. It's the overwhelming majority of Americans agree that abortions should not happen after that point, unless it's for the life of the mother. We had those exceptions in place, and I agree with that. If Republicans were in the majority, we would not get rid of abortion. We won't be banning abortion or anything like that. It's just something that is a political issue every time. But in my mind, this is a social issue. As long as America decides that it wants to keep abortion, we're going to have abortion. I think it's important to educate people on what it is. I don't see that happening a lot from the other side. As a matter of fact, that's what they don't want. I personally find it disturbing when people talk about abortion being used to keep population down or to keep unwanted children down, because that's not the argument that you hear when you hear about it being defended. You always hear about rape and incest and things like that. It's very, very, very rare, but very disturbing when someone, talks about using abortion to as a population control, or to not let kids be born because they wouldn't have a good life. I think there's a lot of people that have survived abortions or grown up, been the children of bad situations that have gone on to have very fulfilling lives, and I think they're very grateful to have the gift of life given to them.
That's time. Thank you. All right. Next question. This person is interested in Maine's rollout of the legalization of marijuana. And they want to know, where are we with legalization, and what is your approach to determining where and when such sales can take place? Has it been a value add for the state of Maine? And Billy Bob, do you want to start that one?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry. This is in regards to the legalization of marijuana in the state. Where are we with legalization, and what is your approach to determining where and when such sales can take place? Has this been successful for the state of Maine?
I think it has. The voters have overwhelmingly passed legalization several times. And you know, in the industry, they prefer to call it cannabis. I think the state has brought in a lot of revenue from it. I think that the recreational use has been successful. I think that we have a major problem with illegal Chinese Communist Party grows. I think a lot of Chinese mafia have come here, talking about, you know, back to the problem we were talking about earlier, housing. They've bought, you know, in the hundreds of properties in the state of Maine and taken them off the market and using them for illegal marijuana grows. And they're taking that illegal marijuana and selling it throughout the country to fund the mafia. So it was a problem that we were warned about through the Border Patrol, and Senator Collins had inquired about it, and it was something that I thought we were going to address and take care of. There wasn't a willingness to do that in the legislature. I introduced a bill on it. John Andrews introduced a bill on it. They're both Republican bills to try to do something about the illegal Chinese marijuana grows. And very recently, it appears that the Mills administration took care of the problem by giving them licenses. And I think that's despicable, because our cannabis growers in the state of Maine have worked very hard for their industry, and they deserve to have that piece of the pie. And I don't appreciate the fact that Chinese Communist Party comes here, does it illegally, breaks all our rules, and then gets handed licenses. So I would have much rather addressed that in a different way. But other than that, I think that the people of Maine have spoken on this issue several times, and I support the industry.
Thank you. Norman, same question. Where are we with the legalization of marijuana in Maine, and what is your approach to determining where and when such sales can take place? Has Maine been successful in its rollout of legalization?
Okay. Yeah, I have to agree with Billy Bob. Like, calling it marijuana is actually a term that came out of racism. So cannabis is definitely the preferred term. And I guess I'm a little behind on the Chinese communist stuff. I don't really know anything about that. But I do know that cannabis has been misunderstood for many, many years. It was demonized. And finally, people are starting to see that there are real medical and helpful things that cannabis can provide, as well as revenue. There's a lot of revenue that's coming into the state from cannabis. You look at Colorado, and Colorado is doing really well with cannabis sales and the taxes and fees that come from all of that stuff. Currently, I'm working on the select board to come up with cannabis regulation for Sullivan. Back in 2019, there was there was a prohibition on it that has been lifted. So now we've got to face, how are we going to implement cannabis here in Sullivan? Is it going to be just medical? Is it going to be just retail? Is it going to be a combination of both? And I think that there can be common sense that can prevail in this to bring about revenue for Sullivan and the area. And I believe that common sense stuff like that can prevail in the legislature. I don't think that cannabis has to be a party thing. I think it can be something that both Republicans, Democrats, and independents can agree on, that the demonization has to end, and we can move forward with good, clean cannabis operations.
Thank you. Next question. What role can or should legislatures have in addressing federal regulations regarding the fishing industry? Norm, do you want to start that one?
Repeat.
What role can or should legislatures have in addressing federal regulations regarding the fishing industry?
Now, I might not know as much about fishing as Billy Bob does. I did work as a starman on my grandfather's boat when I was young. I've been on sea cucumber boats. I've been on sea urchin boats. I've been on mussel boats. Um, I've I've done a lot of the fishing, and I've heard a lot of the regulations. Now, what to do as a rule regarding federal? You said federal laws, right? Or federal regulations?
Yeah, and we could broaden it and say what role should the legislature have in supporting the fishing industry? If you want to take that a little broader.
Well, yeah, definitely. I feel like there are many ways in which the legislature can help with the fishing industry, fighting against a lot of those things that are trying to be imposed, like the measurement thing that was just kicked back until July, I believe. It's important to fight back against certain things that just don't make sense, that just aren't that are being implemented or carried out by people who know nothing about the fishing industry. Also, with that, I also think that things like there was a law that was on the books not too long ago about septic systems in shoreland zoning, and regulating those, because that's a lot of stuff that's going into the ocean that can affect lobsters and other things, and supporting legislation like that to keep our waters clean, to keep things like um, fishing farms, and things that would hurt our fishing industries. I feel like it's important to be educated and to fight back when necessary.
Thank you. Billy Bob, what role can or should legislatures have in addressing federal regulations regarding the fishing industry, or more broadly, in just supporting the fishing industry?
So I think the state plays a big role in fighting against federal regulations or dealing with the federal government. For example, one of the bills I sponsored was an act to create a legal defense fund for the lobster industry, and that bill successfully passed, and it was able to give funding to the lobster industry to fight against the whale rules that were crippling the lobster industry. And that's a battle that we actually ended up winning in the courts in Washington, D.C. So that was a huge success that the industry had fighting against the federal government. Uh, I'm a big 10th Amendment guy, which is for those that don't know, that's the amendment that says that whatever's not in the Constitution is left to the states. I think that the federal government has overstepped many times on what it puts onto the states. And I think the states have a responsibility to fight the federal government. I have long been an advocate, and I don't know if we'll ever get here, but I would like to see the state exercise more sovereignty over its waters. I don't like the fact that we gave up our out to 12-mile that we used to regulate completely. Now we're only out to 3 miles. I'd like to see us expand that back out to 12 miles on our fisheries. Um, because honestly, I'm sick of the federal government. I'm sick of the way they regulate us. We've got a healthy lobster fishery out there that many people are limited to fish in. There's only about 1,000 or so federal permit holders, while we maintain 5,000 lobster licenses. So that's a whole area that could be expanded. There is a very healthy population of halibut out there that the federal government pretty much prohibits us from fishing. They haven't let us go shrimp fishing in 8 or 9 years, I think, which is absolutely ridiculous. And so I think that if the state had control of more water out to 12 miles, we would be able to just tell the federal government to pound sand. Um, so we actually had a bill in for that last session that didn't go anywhere, but there is some precedent for it. There are other states that have sovereignty out to 12 miles. I think there's another one, can't remember which, Texas or somewhere, that has it out to 7 or 8 miles. But even when the federal government does get the last word, there's always the courts, and it's important for the state to fight for our industries and go to court. And the state's actually been pretty good about that. And I have to give DMR credit because we've used our state resources to do science, fight back all this whale stuff the whole time. And it's important to have a legislature that backs up the fishing industry so that we can keep that funding available when it's necessary.
Thank you. I think this one will be interesting, given your background, Norman, as a foster parent, and Billy Bob, your background as a legislator. Is Maine's child welfare system performing as it should? Billy Bob?
No, it's an absolute failure. We keep continuing to get it wrong, and kids continue to die in state care, which is absolutely despicable. The changes have not been made to correct this. It just, when you're changing the person at the top and it's the same all underneath, you're not going to get different results. And the state has, been on this pendulum, it feels like, where kids get in the foster care system, and then there's either the state is all in for reunification, and you've seen examples where they've put kids in unsafe situations and they've been killed by their parents, or the pendulum is swung the other way so far that they're keeping them in dangerous foster situations when they have good parents, that want the children back, and the state has kept them out of their hands. So I think the state needs to do a better job of having more qualified workers in the positions that can assess the situation. Is this a dangerous situation, or should the child be reunified? But what I hear from advocates is that the state seems to go to these extreme levels of the pendulum swing, and I think that it's a difficult job for people to do, to be social workers and to work there, because they're put in very uncomfortable situations. The children sometimes, many times come from absolute nightmare situations. I mean, let's just be honest, if you're separated from your parents, that's a nightmare situation. Everybody should, you would hope that everybody has good parents and they get to stay with their parents, but that's just not what happens. So it's essential that we have a good foster care system with good people that are vetted to make sure that bad things aren't happening in that care. And then we also need to determine whether it's a danger for them to be with their parents, because too many kids have died, and we can't just let it continue to keep going on like this. Something has to change.
Thank you. Norman, is the state's child welfare system performing as it should?
Absolutely not. And this is one topic where I feel like I would need more than 3 minutes, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. We got into becoming foster parents. It actually was always a dream of mine to become a foster dad. My grandfather, back in the 1940s and 50s, he was in foster care, and he was treated horribly, and the family was separated. And so I wanted to somehow right that wrong by becoming a foster parent myself. I had to wait until my 5 kids were a little bit older so that I could bring an additional child into the home. But what I experienced, or what I've witnessed so far in the foster care system, is the gold standard is that reunification. That's what they go for. That's what they preach. That's what we're supposed to do, is reunification. But really what I've noticed is it's not just a matter of if the kids are going to go back or if the kids are taken away. It's that these kids have experienced trauma. They've experienced horrible trauma, and kids who have experienced trauma have special needs that is really difficult for foster parents to meet. And sure, you can go through the extra training, become therapeutic foster homes, but that really doesn't do much. You get I think $37 a day if you're therapeutic. But these kids have conditions like reactive attachment disorder, where they'll lash out against you, they'll lash out against teachers, they become bullies, they become dangerous in your home, they kill your pets. That's all stuff I've experienced personally. And the problem is that the state isn't getting these kids the help that they need fast enough, and they're not getting the foster parents help that they need fast enough either, and parents get burnt out. And so what I would like to see is actually legislation that when a child is placed into a home, into a foster home, that the foster parent gets a full history of this child, why they were taken, where they're coming from, all that stuff. Because oftentimes they just drop these kids off and you get their name, you get the trash bag full of stuff, and that's it. You don't know the trauma they went through. You don't know their experience. And so it can be really difficult to help that child out. But what I would like to see is that when a child is placed into a foster home, that there's family counseling in which the foster kid and the foster parents and the bio parents, if this is a safe enough situation, can go through therapy all together, because they'll offer therapy for the child that takes forever to get. Eventually, 5-6 months down the road, the kid starts going to therapy. But if we had a way to have family counseling so that that child knows that they're safe, knows the expectations of the foster home, the foster parents know the expectations that the kids have too, I think that that would go a long way in increasing foster parents, because we're getting burnt out. We're losing foster parents every day. And
Thank you.
I see I'm time. Yeah.
Sorry, sneaking in there. Okay, I think we have time to squeeze in one more question. This one is, looking at the way Maine approaches taxation, do you believe there are some features of our current tax policy that need to be made more fair for some of our citizens? Norman, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the United States as a whole, I mean, we're taxed on everything. Where, it's not just an income tax. You have sales tax, you have property tax, excise tax, tax on everything. There's even a tax on death. So definitely, I feel like there's room for improvement as far as taxation goes, because the Maine people are taxed too high. I feel like, especially those working class. Everybody talks about the middle class, but like, I'm not even middle class. I don't even make that bar yet. Like, I'm way below that. And I think a majority of people in this district they would love to one day be middle class, but I feel like everything's stacked against them, to include the way that we're taxed and the rate at which we're taxed. Our property taxes are too high. Our income taxes are too high. Like, it needs to be adjusted. And I look forward to what Billy Bob has to say about this. He's been in for 6 years, so.
Thank you. Billy Bob, looking at the way Maine approaches taxation, do you believe there are some features of our current tax policy that need to be made more fair for some of our citizens?
Absolutely. We are the fourth highest tax state in the country, where we rank number one for highest property tax based on income. And we've, as a Republican, we've been trying to reduce taxes for years. And the fact is that the Democrats have controlled the legislature, and this is where we've ended up. And you can't continue spending, because you have to pay for that. And that's what they've done, is increase taxes over the years to the point that we're one of the highest tax states in the country. I want to see that go the other direction. I put in a bill to increase the homestead exemption to $50,000, because I personally feel like property tax is the most cruel tax. There's not really any tax that I'm a fan of, but a tax that can take your home away from you is the cruelest tax that I see. So I would like to see us increase the homestead exemption so that someone could have at least a modest home and not get taxed on it. So when I presented that bill, I literally, the two chairs, the Senate chair Democrat and the House chair Democrat, laughed at me, laughed out loud when I presented that bill. It's you can check it out on my Facebook page. It's on a video on there. But that's really one that I would like to see increased. As a matter of fact, personally, I'd like to see the homestead exemption even go up to 100,000. Because, you know, like I said, that's the tax that hurts people the most. So obviously, income tax would probably be my second target. We've tried numerous bills, and I did actually have some success passing a bill that reduced taxes on pensions across the board. And I'm gonna keep working on it, you know, but we have to reduce spending. You can't continue to spend and cut taxes. You have to make a choice.
Thank you. All right, I think it's time to wrap it up with closing statements. I think we drew straws and Norm, and you will have the first closing statement.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank the League of Women's Voters for putting this on so that we can talk about these important things. And I noticed that throughout the debate and stuff, like if you look at my signs, it says people over party, because I believe that right now we are divided. There's us versus them, left versus right, Republican, Democrat, and even tonight I heard a lot of Republicans and Democrats, and I feel like looking back on a lot of the voting records and the rolls is we see the most success when they work together, when Democrats and Republicans can just stop blaming each other for problems and stop toting the party line and get down to business and just work together and find common sense. Because if you go into a meeting room already hating the person because of the label that they have attached to them, whether it be Republican or Democrat, then you're not willing to really get to the issue because you've already got a bias in your mind. And so even though I'm running as a Democrat, I feel like I could work with both sides. I have friends from all walks of life. I bartend at the Moose Lodge on Thursday, and you'd be hard pressed to find a Democrat there, but they all love me. We have great time discussing politics and working out everything. And so I feel like that's what's needed in Augusta is this common sense, no more division and blaming the other party, but rather coming together and unifying for what's best for our district, representing all people, all businesses, all industries of our community, which is a very special place to live.
Thank you. Billy Bob, your closing statement.
Thank you, Cyndi, for being the moderator tonight, and thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting this debate. It's been one of the greatest honors of my life to serve as the state representative for this district. I love this community. You won't find anybody that loves this community or serving its people more than I do. I've served for 6 years now. I'd be honored to serve you for 2 more. And I've been one of the most successful legislators down there. I've found out that even as a Republican, even with the odds stacked against you, that if you know how to talk to people, you treat people with love and respect, and have a convincing case, that you can have success down there. I've passed some of the biggest bills, you know, in state history. We passed a constitutional amendment, the right to food. When the Maine Constitution was written in 1820, there were 24 declarations to the Article of Rights. Right to food was the 25th. It's the first one that's ever been added in 200 years. I was successful in passing a civil asset forfeiture bill, the most comprehensive in the country. No longer can the government just take your stuff without due process. I've passed bills for the lobster industry. I've passed bills for retired teachers. I've increased their health insurance for retired teachers. I'm the only Republican that's been endorsed by the Maine Education Association. I have a very extensive bipartisan record, and the fact that I'm the leader of the Republican caucus shows that the Republican Party has chosen a new direction, and I believe that we're the party of the people, and I'm just one of us working for us. So I would be honored to be reelected as your representative and continue doing the job that I've done in Augusta for the last 6 years.
Thank you. I was like, perfect timing. Thank you both for participating. Everybody vote next Tuesday.
And thank you, Cyndi, for a good job moderating. The video recording of this will be posted on the League's website before the end of the night tonight, and the Facebook live stream is available right now. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you to the candidates for your willingness to run and serve. Thank you for a good job moderating, Cyndi. We'll see you all out there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.